here. I want to thank representatives from the media for being here to cover the MAST Act press conference. Today we're privileged to have some people that you certainly know and recognize, and so it's thrilling to me to be able to have our mayor, one of our commissioners here, also the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce with us today, and some stakeholders in the fishing industry. People that certainly need no introduction are here with us today. People that make their living in these waters and really aid and assist our economy. So it is great to have them here. And without any further ado, we're going to get into allowing them to make their comments, and then I will have some comments about the MAST Act. But first, I'd like to introduce Panama City Mayor Greg Wrightley.
Thank you, Congressman. I have wade fished, cast netted, boated, sailed, and fished the waters of Bay County, Gulf, and the Bay for the last 50 years. And, over those years, I remember when there was no regulation whatsoever over what we could harvest. And over the years, they put a limit on the size of certain fish. There's seasons on certain fish. I remember when snapper, there was no limit, then it went from 4 to 2, and when trout was 12 inches, went to 14, went to 15, then went from 15 to 20. We went from 10 to 7 down to 5 fish. And over that time frame, we had a net ban 20 years ago that went in place. And then later on, we established an estuary out there in the Gulf, some 30 to 40 miles out, to have a breeding ground for fish. So we have done a very, very good job on a local, county, and state level to regulate ourselves. And to have the ability for someone possibly from Washington to come in at this time and say and do something that doesn't know the difference between a mullet and a skipjack just really doesn't make sense. When the congressman, people called me, they said, would you come out today? We need to sit down and talk about how things need to be adjusted and how we need to be able to let people know that we can continue to regulate ourselves. So at this time, I would like to introduce our Chamber of Commerce Chairman, Larry Carroll.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate that. It's certainly my pleasure to join everyone here with my friend Steve Southerland, Congressman Steve Southerland. And one thing that Steve, every time you talk to him, he tells if you cut him, he will bleed Bay County in Northwest Florida. And being from Bay County most of my adult life and raising a family of 3 here, I feel the same way. If you cut me, I'm going to bleed Bay County, Florida. Fishing is a spoke in the wheel in an industry that creates billions of dollars for our economy. If people come down here on vacation and they can't fish and can't come down here for vacation and find what they're looking for, they will go elsewhere. I simply love Steve Sutherland's, he often quotes, he says, they're trying to make the Gulf of Mexico a giant aquarium. I said, and with the regulations that they're trying to put down on us and the way they're trying to regulate it, it's going to happen. It's going to be a giant aquarium that we're not going to be able to do anything but go out there and watch the fish. I would like to thank Steve for the effort that he's making to help protect the small business industry of fishing and the impact that it has on us, and just not for the fishermen and for the people that make a living doing it, but for the quality of life that we have here in Bay County being a part of it. Thank you again very much.
Next we have Gene Ratfield from the Southeastern Fisheries Association, Regional Director.
Good afternoon. Take a minute to thank everyone for allowing me to speak today on behalf of Southeastern Fisheries Association in regards to Representative Southerland's Bill H.R. 4988, MAST. I'm the Director of Southeastern Fisheries in this district area, and I fully support, our industry supports, Representative Southerland's Bill H.R. 4988. I am Eugene Raffield, Vice President of Raffield Fisheries, Inc., located in Port St. Joe, Florida. My family has been in this business since 1898 and runs a commercial fishing operation there. I'm the 6th generation of my family, and I'm proud to be a commercial fisherman. We are against any new MPAs, areas that are located in our exclusive economic zone, until all groups are fully involved in the process and include honest stock assessments for all regulated species. We are over-regulated as an industry far and wide right now. The last thing our economy needs is our president shutting down jobs. Both commercial and recreational sectors are being pushed out of business right now. I can't thank Representative Southerland enough for standing up for what is right, for introducing H.R. 4988, marine access and state transparency. Thank God he is on the House of Natural Resources Committee, where now, because of his hard work and dedication, both commercial and recreational sectors have a voice now that's being heard. In closing here today, it is imperative that all of you understand what is really going on here. There are two different groups here, ladies and gentlemen. The first group is what I call Group Zero. Group Zero wants all fishing and hunting stopped, period. The other group is Group One. They want sustainable fishing and hunting for all and future generations. May God bless all of you in this country. Thank you very much.
Next, we have Pam Anderson, who is the Recreational Fishing Alliance Board Member. Pam?
Thank you, Mayor and Representative Southerland and other distinguished guests. I'm honored to share a few thoughts regarding the MAST Act, a legislative proposal to stop a runaway government takeover of our nation's waterways and fishing grounds. As we see other measures lurking behind the scenes, like the National Ocean Policy and Coastal Marine Spatial Planning and catch shares, that seem practical at face value, with further inspection, they are truly meant to reduce access by our nation's citizens to our natural resources, just as are the President's intentions to create the world's largest ocean preserve in the Pacific Ocean. I applaud Representative Southerland for seeing through some of these cloaked measures that are meant to reduce the number of businesses and jobs on the waterfronts of our nation. There have been many unintended consequences in the laws regulating our fishing industry, unintended by Congress, I believe, but not by certain organizations who push for such harsh, non-scientific based and inflexible regulations, and who are surely behind the recent legislation that our representative is attempting to stop today. Our local and national fishing industries appreciate his constant vigilance in protecting our industry and finding ways to protect the recreational fishery as a vital part of our economy in the Southeast. Being our advocate on House Natural Resources Committee has not been an easy road, but he has stood the challenge because, having grown up an advocate of our great fishing, he knows the importance of balancing our resources with commerce. We know if we abuse the resources, we lose it, plain and simple. But we also know it is a blessing from God, part of his provision for us, for our sustenance and our enjoyment. The MAST Act, we believe, is an important measure to protect the citizens from yet another act of runaway government. Our forefathers set up a roadmap to follow, our Constitution. It contains 3 branches of government, each one having a special place of importance. To have one overstep its authority, such as the executive branch has done in this case, gives way to harmful regulations that have no checks and balances. We must support our legislators when they work as hard as ours does to protect our rights as citizens and our life as Americans. Thank you, Representative Southerland.
Next, we have the chairman of our county commission, Mr. Guy Tennell.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning. It's certainly an honor and a privilege to be here this morning to discuss this very important issue. Certainly important to not only Bay County, but all of Northwest Florida. So important to me that I asked my two granddaughters, Emma and Eli, to come along with me because it is so important. Our family has fished the waters of Bay County commercially and recreationally for over 100 years. I know how important our natural resources are to all of us and to the two of them especially. Bay County residents know what's best for Bay County. We recognize the value of our marine resources and will do everything we can to protect them. Bay County has embarked on a very extensive effort to drastically broaden its artificial reef program. We recognize that our fishery is critical to the continued economic success of this area, from the tourism it draws, commercial fishermen it employs. We don't need the president or his bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. dictating to us how we live and further damaging our economy. Representative Southerland's efforts are important to ensuring that our way of life here in Bay County and Northwest Florida isn't negatively impacted by the seemingly insatiable thirst for control of the current administration. Steve Southerland has been a longtime friend of mine and a friend of Bay County, and I certainly want to applaud his efforts in trying to protect our natural resources. And I'd like to welcome him back to the podium.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. My friend Guy Tennell, thank you. I want to thank Mayor Brudnicki, Greg, for the great work he does. Larry and his leadership at the Chamber of Commerce, understanding that the single greatest stimulus to a community is a good paying job. And the Chamber of Commerce understands that. And my good friends, Eugene Rathfield and Pam Anderson, there's certainly nothing that I can teach you guys about fishing. Your families, your rich heritage here. You are North and Northwest Florida. You represent our legacy. You represent our culture. And I thank you for standing with me today on an issue that's so important. As the representatives of our local government and the great job that they do, our small businesses, and our fishing community, no one understands the crippling impact of Washington over-regulation better than this group standing behind me. We've had, over the last 5 years, an administration all too willing to overstep its bounds. We saw that last week, and we saw a correction in the opinion of the Supreme Court weigh in. Stunning reversals of this administration's overreach. Its bounds, they've sidestepped the Constitution to impose an agenda that's out of touch with hardworking North and Northwest Floridians. On health care, on the environment, energy policy, foreign affairs, appointed czars in government, and more than ever, how our oceans are regulated. A lot of people don't know that I've been privileged to represent Florida on the Natural Resources Committee for 4 years, and more specifically, serving now in my 4th year as a member of the Fisheries Subcommittee. Every week that I am in Washington, D.C., I have a front row seat to look at the onerous regulations and what is going on in the fisheries, in our waters, our bays, our estuaries. As a member of this important committee, I have long been a leading opponent of the President's National Oceans Policy, which transfers, I might add, the sovereignty of America in its waterways, to the United Nations. It is a sinister policy and a sinister effort by this president. A regulatory plan that would restrict the access of American families, like the Andersons, like the Rathfields, and small businesses. It would restrict their access to our oceans and its fisheries. But last month, President Obama doubled down his effort, announcing his plan to shut down up to an additional 780,000 square miles of the Pacific Ocean as a national monument, off limits to fishing and energy exploration. That's an unprecedented water grab, larger than the land mass of Florida, Alaska, and Texas combined. And there is nothing to stop them from doing the same thing to the Gulf of Mexico or off the coast in the Atlantic Ocean. That's why I've introduced the Marine Access and State Transparency Act, or the MAST Act. Now, this legislation is very simple. It's something that I think that those that I represent in Florida's 2nd Congressional District would agree with. This legislation would require the president, or any president following the current president, to receive congressional authorization or the approval of the state legislature of any state within 100 nautical miles before using the Antiquities Act of 1906 to lock down these areas to responsible recreation and commerce. Not only are we in a race against the clock to turn back the president's recent plans for the Pacific Ocean, but my bill will ensure he cannot do the same thing in other bodies of water. It empowers the states. When I went to Washington 4 years ago, I said the states needed to do more and the federal government needed to do less. It gives the people's house. Thank you. Because you know what? Government governs best when it governs closest to the people. And I think that commissioners like Gatineau and the current county commission and our city commission, like Mayor Brudnicki and those that work on cities issues, I think they know best. I think that the state knows best. And so what this does is this empowers the states. It gives the people's house that I represent, you, the 700,000 people of Florida's 2nd Congressional District, it gives the people's house a say, a voice, in how the people's coastlines will be managed. It ensures greater transparency, and it has no impact on protections already in place. Let me be clear. It has no impact on protections already in place, such as the military mission line off Florida's Gulf Coast, which is so important, okay, to the 325th, okay, and also to the bases to the west of us in Jeff Miller's 1st Congressional District. That's the kind of common sense we need in fisheries management. You know what I have found as I have talked to people from different parts of the fishing industry, whether they're commercial, whether they're charter for hire, or whether they're recreational. People just want to experience freedom. They want to work hard, and they want to know that they're going to be rewarded for that hard work. They want sustainable fisheries, as Greg, the mayor, talked about. He's been fishing here, he's born and raised here, been fishing here for 50 years. He understands that without a sustainable fisheries, that small businesses like Miller Marine back there are not going to have an opportunity to make it. People have to come to our area and fish. And we want a sustainable fishery. We all just finished a 9-day recreational season. And by the way, I was down this past week in Key West to the Gulf Council meeting, and they're talking about a 6-day season already. Now, if you were privileged enough to go offshore during those 9 days, you saw that the red snapper, it's not overfished. An arbitrarily low set quota is overfished, but not the snapper fishery itself. The common sense, what is the basis of the MAST Act, is the common sense we need in fisheries management. In the short time since we've introduced the MAST Act, our office has received very positive feedback from my colleagues and from fisheries organizations all around the country. We've got over 10 organizations from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast, okay, that are in favor of this because they recognize the threat of what this administration will do, unilaterally shutting down the freedoms we enjoy in our waterways. I look forward to returning to Washington tomorrow to continue to build support for this important legislation. And when I leave tomorrow to get back to D.C., when I land, this is what we're going to do. We're going to introduce this piece of legislation, and I hope that the people of our district, the men and women, the hardworking men and women of Florida's 2nd Congressional District, and districts all over this country, okay, will reach out to their elected officials and encourage them to be a part of this legislation. Our fishermen have already been forced to suffer under this 9-day season, okay? Both our head boats, both our recreational, they've already been forced to suffer. It's time to say enough is enough of the burdensome Washington mandates. And with that, I'm happy to answer some questions from the media if there are any.
I have one.
Yes?
How far out is this? We have Florida waters versus south. Where is the
Well, what it says is that if the president, this president or any president going forward, proposes a national monument because of the 1906 Antiquities Act, that if it is within 100 nautical miles of state waters, now our state waters go to the 9-mile mark, okay? So anywhere within that 109 miles, then what the president must do is he must have, in addition to the authority of Congress, okay, he must also have the approval of the governor of that state and their legislature. Okay, so it must be a partnership, okay, both federal and statewide. So the 100-mile mark, the delineation is 100 miles outside of what is their state waters. For us, it would be 109.
So, what would it mean, the imperativeness of this act, what does it mean if it doesn't go through? What would that mean for the economy?
Well, I think the person probably best to answer that would be Eugene Raffield. I mean, his family is commercial fishing, and so if the president, okay, would do in the Gulf of Mexico what he has stated on June 12th doing, okay, in the Pacific, then let me, I mean, Eugene, if you would come forward and answer that question. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but what would that mean for you and your family and industry?
To give you an analogy, it'd be like someone, the president, also we're talking about doing this, these regulations. It would be like going up to South Georgia where there's farmland and saying, all right, guys, we're going to take all of South Georgia, we're going to make it all golf courses now. There'd be no production of the vegetables and the fruits there. Same way with the oceans. It was given to us by our creators, and we don't need a dictator to just come in and say we're going to rub this off. You got to have production. These are productive waters, and when you take that away, you never get it back. And both commercial and recreational sectors are being pushed right now out. It would be devastating. We can't. Both industries cannot take any more regulation. Cannot take it.
But I want to be clear, this prevents the president from acting unilaterally. He would have to have the permission of Congress, and then if that sanctuary or that monument preserve was inside that 100-mile mark, then he would also have to have the permission of that governor and that state legislature. So it would eliminate Washington from pushing its regulations without the input of the people that it would harm the most. And so I think that's common sense. And as I travel around the district, the people that I touch and talk to each and every day, they want more say, Washington to have less say, and that's what this legislation does. No, this is based, our legislation was based on the president's comments that he made on June 12th. Okay, so this is a direct, this legislation is a direct result from the president showing his hand of what he intends to do in the Pacific Ocean, and to take 780,000 square miles, okay, of open water and shut it down. Okay, one of the largest supporters that we've had has been the industry off of the coast of California. They're already calling our office. They're applauding our efforts. They're calling their representatives. Right now we have interest on the Senate side to have a companion bill to be introduced in the Senate, and so we think that this is going to gain a lot of traction because what this is going to do today. Look, you've got the county, you've got the city, you've got the Chamber of Commerce, you've got small business. It is actions like this that continue to cripple an economy that's already struggling. An economy that wants to roar. Look, the people that own these boats, they want to fish. They don't want to hand out. They want to fish. And so therefore, that's why, to have my friends here standing here and being a part of this press conference is critical. This is common sense legislation. And I think what the president is doing to a land mass, the size, or to a water mass, the size, of California, Alaska, and Florida combined, Alaska, Texas, and Florida combined, that's unheard of. No one should have that power. And what this does is this prevents the president from acting in such a way.
I have one other question.
Yes.
How can we change the fishing regulations that are in place right now, season limits and things like that? What's going on to changes that the local guys can, see the media?
Well, as you know, Florida declared in its state waters this year that it was going to break from federal regulation. And inside of state waters, the state of Florida went to a 54-day season. They finally said enough's enough. We listen, our bait and tackle shops, our hotels, our restaurants, we've got to have an economy. We've got to have people come here to fish. And so I applaud the state of Florida by saying, you know what, we're going to take control of our state waters. And so we have a 54-day season. I want to applaud the county commission. I know we got Commissioner Dozier here because what we're doing to build reefs. Okay, I look at what Bay County is doing to take control of its own future. And where are they building reefs? They're building reefs now inside the state watermark. Okay? They're not building reefs inside federal waters that are only going to be shut down by bureaucrats. So to say what can we do, I think that the state officials and the FWC has done the right thing. And by the way, Florida has done it following the action of Texas, following the action of Louisiana. And then after Florida's leadership this year, just last week, Alabama and Mississippi all joined and said to the federal government, enough is enough. And so therefore now all 5 Gulf Coast states stand together in saying, Washington, you don't know what's best. Now, who's doing this in Washington? The President of the United States appoints the Secretary of Commerce. It is the Secretary of Commerce that oversees NOAA and the National Marine Fisheries. And now we're getting down to where the problem is. And the problem is the data. And the National Marine Fisheries is not interested in the true data. The National Marine Fisheries is interested in an agenda. And that agenda is doing what Larry said. It turns that Gulf of Mexico into an aquarium rather than a sustainable fishery where we can enjoy our legacy, our heritage, and jobs. And that's what this is about. All right. If there's no further questions, I want to thank each of you from the media for being here. And I know we've got a few people here that have walked up to hear this press conference. This is simple. This is about jobs. This is about freedom. This is about way of life. And this is telling Washington, D.C., you don't know what's best for us and our lives. And I thank you very much for being here. I want to thank Mayor Brudnicki for kind of being the MC. I want to thank Larry Carroll. I want to thank all the members of the Bay County Chamber of Commerce, Carol Roberts, and Larry and their leadership. I want to thank Commissioner Tennell, Commissioner Dozier for being here. I want to thank their leadership. Pam Anderson and Eugene Raffield, thank you for continuing the legacy of fishing from your family generations to the next generations. And I appreciate it. We'll continue to answer questions and provide any of the necessary documents to the media. Thank you.